Hello everyone, welcome to another video. It is me, Desiree, and today the focus of the video is this beautiful plant here called the Philodendron Bobbsea. And I think it's kind of weird that I haven't done a dedicated video on this plant because this plant is one of my absolute favorites. I don't really hear anybody talk about it. I never see it in anybody's plant tours that they do of their houses. I rarely see it for sale anywhere, and it's one of the easiest, coolest, wildest looking plants I've ever seen. So today we're talking all about it. I'm going to talk about lighting, soil, watering, propagation, all that kind of stuff, at least everything that I've experienced with the plant, of course. And I do have an unboxing of this plant on my other channel because when I first was getting into plants, I wanted to just talk about plants on the channel that I already had. Obviously it didn't end up working out. I didn't really like it, so I started a separate channel all about plants, but the unboxing is on the other channel, so I'll link it down below in the description box in case you want to see how it arrived. I did order it from Cactus Club, which is one of my favorite places to shop for plants from, and it arrived in great shape. It looked awesome. I was losing my mind with excitement because I had just gotten into plants a couple months before, and I had never, most plants I had never seen before, so everything to me was brand new and cool, and this one just jumped out at me. I had never seen anything like it. These long, crazy looking stems, these amazing leaves with this like shark tooth thing. I don't know, is that even what it's called? I've always called it that. Anyway, it's got this amazing leaf shape. Of course, these are like more mature leaves, and even when they're more mature, they get even like deeper cuts, and it looks so good. I did see this on Cactus Club's website a couple of months ago, and I almost bought it. I was like, I'm gonna buy another one. I didn't end up doing it, but I would refer you to their website if you're looking for one, because I've literally never seen one on any other website. I've only seen it there, and only twice. So you gotta kind of just keep an eye out for it, I guess. So I've had this plant for a little over 2 years, or is it exactly 2 years now that I've had this? Let me double check. It was May 6th, 2021 when I got this plant. And so I've had it for 2 years. I've had 2 years of experience with it, so I feel like I have a little bit to share. So when it first arrived, it had 3 or 4 leaves on it, and one of the leaves had a black spot. And I freaked out because I was new to plants, so I was looking it up online, and I was like, what's this black spot on my plant? And you'll get some information by trying to diagnose your plant like that. Basically what everybody said online was cut the dead part off. So I just cut the black spot off, but it started up again and it ended up taking over the whole leaf, so I cut it off, the whole leaf. And you can't really even see where the cut is now because it kind of heals over itself really well. So the plant did get a black spot, and the spot just like got bigger and bigger until the whole leaf was gone. And of course, back then, being a brand new plant person, I was like not wanting to cut the leaf off, but ultimately it never spread to the other leaves or anything like that. So that's the only real like pest type thing that I've dealt with this plant. I honestly don't even know what that was, but it was a black spot. So just letting you know, I did get it on this plant when I first got it. I've never had a pest on it. It's never had spider mites or anything like that. I don't know if it's just kind of one of those resistant plants, or I've just been lucky. I have no idea, but I haven't really dealt with pests at all. But if I were to get spider mites, I would go straight for Captain Jack's insecticidal soap. It's the best thing. It's the only thing I use. It works like a charm. As far as the soil goes, this plant does seem to be very adaptable to whatever, because I've had this in a bunch of different types of soil. Of course, I kept it in the soil that it was in from the store for a really long time. Then when I potted it, not in this, into something else, just because it's really top heavy, I kept feeling like I had to keep it in a heavy pot. I put it in the Miracle Grow indoor potting mix, just straight from the bag with no amendments, no mix-ins, straight from the bag, and it did perfectly fine. What it's in right now, I want to say it still might be that soil. I see some bark mixed in here, so I want to say I did my normal like mixing some houseplant mix with some orchid bark and mixing it together. I'm pretty sure that's what I did here, and it seems to be doing just fine as well. I've never fertilized it just because I'm afraid to fertilize my plants. I don't know why. I feel like I always hear about fertilizer burn, and I know it'll happen to me the first time I try it. So I've never fertilized it, so just a heads up. All of this happened in 2 years with no fertilization. I'm sure in the soil there was some stuff in there though, but I'm sure it could do with a little bit of a feeding every now and then. So it does seem to be pretty adaptable as far as soil goes. It seems to be fine in kind of anything. I think what's more important than the soil is the amount of water that you're giving the plant. So if your soil is super airy, chunky, and it's not retaining a lot of water, you're gonna have to water it all the time. I like something a little more in the middle that kind of holds onto some moisture. I don't want my plant to dry out by the end of the day because I didn't have anything in there that was holding onto water. But as far as watering goes, I just went on a rant. As far as watering goes, again, this plant seems very adaptable. There hasn't really been a time where I felt like it's suffering because I'm underwatering it. Like right now, it really needs water, and I'm a huge fan of letting the plant tell me when it wants water because I don't want to overwater things, you know? So I do take a look at the leaves, and I feel the leaves all the time, and for the most part they should still feel pretty firm. Not like a succulent would feel firm, but they should feel firm. And right now they're pretty soft, they're pretty pliable. It definitely needs water, and once I water it, the leaves just kind of fill right out, and you know, it stays like that. I mean, right now during the summer, I don't know, I say I water this maybe every 3 weeks or so, but of course you got to check your own plant. Don't just assume because I'm watering mine every 3 weeks that you gotta water yours every 3 weeks. And it's just a guess. Like, I don't really know exactly how many days are going in between the watering, but I want to say I'm watering it at least once a month for sure. And as far as lighting goes, so let's talk lighting. This plant loves the light. So I've had this plant in many different areas in my house. I also had it back in my apartment when we only had one window, and the plant didn't really grow. But like with any plant, it's not gonna thrive and flourish and continue to grow if it's not getting any light. But it wasn't dying. Like, it was perfectly fine being in a really low light situation. And once we came here, it just started growing and growing because I have so much more windows here. The plant loves light, okay? The more light you give it, the more bigger and beautiful the leaves are gonna get. And one important thing with the lighting, if you can't give this plant like 360 light, obviously all of the leaves are gonna grow towards the light source. So I'm sure if this is growing outside, the leaves are gonna grow all around the plant. But obviously the window is this way in my room, so that's where all the leaves are facing. And one very interesting thing about this plant is these stems here will turn to find the light. So like I said, I've had this in many different places in my house. I had it on a shelf in my front room that only has a north-facing window. The plant was here, the window was over there. And these leaves would turn to face the light. Not the whole plant, just the stem would curve. I mean, over time, of course. So I moved it in here because I thought maybe it'll straighten out, and I put it on the top right there next to the window. No joke. The leaves started turning almost all the way around. So the leaves were facing like backwards to get to the light source. So it loves light and it will reach for the light. Right now I have it sitting on this shelf. I'm sure you see it in the background of my videos. And the window is in front of the plant. So that seems to be working out best for me because all the stems are facing forward. But this plant absolutely loves light. I've also found it not to be too bad when it's getting some direct sun. I mean, I haven't put it outside in direct sun. It's through the window, like in the afternoon when the sun is setting. It's perfectly fine with that kind of light. So soil, pretty adaptable to whatever you got. Just use what you have, it'll be okay. Watering, water the plant when it's dry, but I also like to let the plant tell me when it wants water because I don't like to overwater. And lighting as much as possible. So one interesting thing about this plant is it has this weird root right here. And I've always heard, I mean, from the very limited amount of information there is out there about this plant, that you're not supposed to bury that root. And when the plant arrived to me, this wasn't buried either. It was sticking out of the plant and it had a stick in it for support. And as tempted as I am to plant it, because the plant would be a lot more stable if that was in the soil, I haven't been brave enough to do it because I just know, like, when I finally do it, this is gonna rot away or something. So that's kind of how I've seen these plants. But there was one video that I saw online that I'll link down in the description box that gave me the confidence to buy this, because she made it sound like it was the easiest plant. And her root right here was a lot bigger than mine, but it also wasn't buried in the soil. So just something to keep in mind. I mean, I haven't been brave enough to do it, and this does need a stick for support just because of how it grows so weird. But I'm sure if I didn't support it, it would just be hanging all over the pot. Kind of like my super wild philodendron, what's that one called again? Jungle Boogie. It's just all crazy. I feel like that's how this one would grow. Might be an interesting experiment. So let's talk propagation. So this is a plant I had been wanting to cut for a long time, but of course it was my first baby and I didn't want to cut my baby. But it needed it because it was outgrowing the space that it was in, and it just needed to get cut because I didn't want it growing all the way to the ceiling. I also didn't want to put it on the ground and let it grow taller. So I got really brave one day and I cut it. And right here is where I cut it, and 4 leaves came off in that initial cut right there. And I have 2 of them right here because only 2 survived. Okay, what am I doing? So here are my cut leaves. They've been living in this water here, and it's full of roots. They root really, really easily in water, but most plants that have like a nice node will root easily in water for the most part. I did cut off 4 leaves. I tried 2 leaves in soil because although instinctively I knew that if I cut it at the node, which is right here, where you can see these little aerial root bumps, if I cut right underneath that, this is where roots are gonna grow. So I could just put that piece in water, which is what I did with these, and roots grew. But when I was looking it up online, I kept coming across a couple of videos that showed them cutting it and putting it straight into soil. And I thought, well, maybe it's like one of those special plants. But the 2 that I put in soil rotted so quickly. I'm really glad I didn't pot all of them up because now I still have my other 2. And look how big these beautiful leaves were on that plant. I gotta pot those up, they're so pretty. But one interesting thing about having cut the plant is that of course it put out a new shoot. So this is where I made that initial cut, and of course this is new growth off the side. But the first leaf that grew out was this one. This little tiny leaf. This is what I was thinking of, is like, you know when you're starting seeds like for your garden and those 2 little leaves pop up and then the true leaves come up afterwards? That's what I thought of this as being, like that fake leaf that just shows you that it germinated and then the true leaves came out. So the next leaf that came out though was this one. It was a like really juvenile leaf, and I was really disappointed because I guess I assumed the next leaf was gonna look just like this, but of course the plant is kind of like starting over. So this is the leaf that popped up, and these are the types of philodendron leaves I don't like, because every freaking philodendron looks like this when it starts out, and until it gets more mature, you're just gonna have this rounded off leaf. Then another leaf popped out, which was this one. It unfurled really awful. It actually came out at the same time this one did, but it was like stuck in the stem and I didn't know that it was a leaf. So yeah, it's kind of messed up there, but I keep him because it gives him character. And then the next leaf that popped out was this one. Again, a little imperfect, but you know, looking better, getting some shape to it. And then it has another leaf growing right here. I really gotta figure out how to film this. I knew filming with this weirdo plant was gonna be a challenge. But there's another leaf growing right here. Hopefully this one unfurls a little bit better. But yeah, that is what happened after I propagated the plant. It did grow a bunch of new leaves, but each one has been kind of weird. So just something to keep in mind, if you're gonna cut the plant, it might not grow back exactly the way that it was before, but that's okay because I think it just gives it character. It's something interesting. Each leaf, I'm like, well, what's that one gonna look like? You know what I mean? And I can't bring myself to cut off his little nub here because it's just so cute. But yeah, that is it. That is everything I know about this plant. It's so easy. I don't supplement any humidity for this plant. I actually don't for any of my plants. Although I always want to, and I feel like they would appreciate it. They're fine without it. This is definitely one. I live in the Southwest and we got really dry air here, and this one does perfectly fine. Maybe some of these leaves would have unfurled a little better had they had some humidity, but I think what I'm gonna do with this one is like spray some water on it or something, kind of keep it moist, so maybe it'll unfurl a little smoother, not kind of get stuck and get holes in it like that. But for the most part, I don't give this one any other supplemental humidity. But that is it. This is a super easy plant. I'm really glad that it was, because I bought it out of excitement. Like, you know, we buy a lot of plants like that, but this is one that I bought with no experience. I had never bought a plant like this before. I was very green, very new to plants, and it turned out to be really easy, and it has so much sentimental value for me. It's one of my absolute favorites, and it's one that I would recommend. I mean, I'm never gonna say like you need to go get this right now or you're gonna die, but if you're looking at it and you're wondering like, oh, how is that plant? This is how it is. It's weird, it's cool, it's something really interesting and different, and it's so easy, so easy. But yeah, that is it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have this plant, you're interested in it, let me know what your thoughts and opinions are on this. It's one of my favorites, and it's one that I feel I'll always have. Anyway, let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and we will see you later in another video. Goodbye. I was gonna try to wave with the leaf. Did it work? I think it worked.